Hello! In Eastern culture, there's a special tradition of passing down the craft from father to son. It's easy to imagine how this system works if your father is a blacksmith or a cook. But what if your father's job is far more dangerous and risky? And on top of that, it must be kept a secret. That's the way life turned out for little Johnny. The boy has great respect for his father, who has taught him a lot, and he's even willing to get into a fight if someone dares to insult him.
You want to say something bad about my father?
But the boy himself doesn't yet know where his father goes when he disappears for days and weeks, and why bad rumors are going round about him. Will he be able to figure out what the truth is? Kung Wei is smoking nervously as he waits for someone on the streets of Beijing. Meanwhile, his son Johnny is performing at the Youth Martial Arts Championship. The group demonstration is over, and the competition is about to begin. The boy asks his mother Sally where his father is. Kung Wei also wants to attend his son's performance, so he calls his boss over the payphone. The undercover cop says the gangsters have not shown up for the meeting, so he's about to leave.
You wait there until they show up, or you'll be back in uniform on the street.
All right, give it a rest. They're here.
But during the call, the gang does appear on the horizon. Before hanging up, the superior says that he must take their boss, Sean, to the police station. Kung Wei greets the men with a thick stack of fake passports. He throws the money in the criminals' faces and engages them in a fight. Kung Wei repels all attempts to chop him up with an axe and smashes through brick walls with his rivals' foreheads. The policeman deftly puts a bag over Sean and jumps on his bike with him. While the guy is on his way, his son is also displaying his skills under the watchful gaze of the judges. He manages to make it to the finals, where he will face the favorite of the competition. Johnny stares hopefully into the audience, and Kung Wei manages to get into the stadium before the fight begins. With the kidnapped criminal on his back, he proudly watches his son deflecting blows just as well as his father. At this moment, Kung Wei is found by Sean's henchmen trying to free their boss. Their confrontation moves into the tunnels of the stadium, where Kung Wei hangs the bag on a hook and turns two men with axes to flee. The policeman chases after them, catching up with them on the bridge high above the stands. While the judges are giving high scores to Johnny, his father performs acrobatic tricks, hanging from the ceiling of the building, and drops one of his opponents directly into the auditorium. Panic ensues, and the perpetrator takes a woman hostage. Little Johnny realizes that his father needs help. Without thinking twice, he deftly jumps onto the upper rows and knocks the weapon out of the gangster's hands. Kung Wei jumps down, and he and his son force the opponent to surrender. Police officers arrive and apprehend the criminals, and the crowd swings the boy in their arms. Amidst the commotion, Kung Wei slips away as not to break his cover, so no one but his son has noticed his presence. The next morning, Johnny and his father brush their teeth and then practice holding their breath. They dip their faces into the water and stand like that for several minutes while passing acquaintances greet them. The son gives up first, but the father quickly puts him back into the water. His mom notices this and asks if it's necessary to start every single morning with the sea dragon.
You never know when he might need it.
It seems silly. It's not. It's a good exercise.
It's time for Johnny to go to school, and Kung Wei also gets ready for work. Before his father leaves, the son reminds him that in the evening, the mayor of the city will present the boy with an award for his heroism at the competition. Later, the man also discovers a cute note from his son on a cigarette packet wishing him good luck. But this time, Kung Wei doesn't make it to Johnny's important event in time. He joins the family afterwards at the bus stop, where the upset boy shows him a picture that he wishes his father also posed for. Kung Wei quickly finds a way to cheer his son up, promising that he will finally quit smoking. Everyone gets on a crowded bus. There, the father gives his son a watch, which he is very happy about. Sally begins to cough and breathe heavily, and her husband worries about her health. When they return home, Johnny's friend Freddie jumps out from around the corner and tells them to run. The family doesn't take the boy seriously, but a minute later, Kung Wei gets arrested by a police squad in front of their neighbors. Johnny screams desperately for them to let his dad go, but they take him away in an unknown direction. The wife also seems surprised by this turn of events. All this was done to create a cover and to gain the trust of a recently arrested gang member, nicknamed G-Dog. Kung Wei was brilliant in his last mission, and this is what he gets as a reward: another dangerous assignment. Fearing for the health of his wife and his son's well-being, the man wants to refuse the task, but his boss insists that the whole mission will only take 2 weeks. This time, his target will be the powerful mobster named Po Kwong. At night, together with G-Dog, they will need to flee and travel to Hong Kong, where they will be reunited with the boss. The police will play along so they won't have any trouble escaping. Later, Kung Wei puts the plan into action by pretending to have a scuffle in their cell. As they run away, he has to rescue G, who almost gets caught by angry guard dogs. They swing over the barbed wire fence and leave the prison behind. Before they head out to Hong Kong, Kung Wei checks on his family, and G-Dog comes along. Sally is already asleep, though she still has a bad cough. Johnny is doing his homework and is very excited about his father's sudden visit. Kung Wei gives his son money and asks him to take care of his mother while he is away. The man can't say where he is going or why, and G is touched by the witness scene. He sees how much it upsets Johnny to be separated from his father and gives him a ring as a good luck charm before parting. In Hong Kong, G shows Kung Wei the local jewelry stores and buys him accessories to thank him for freeing him. He promises that they will soon be able to afford much more. They go to meet Po Kwong, who intends to buy a large batch of explosives, though the price seems too high for him. He demands that his henchmen come up with a plan to save him money on the deal. For their silly ideas, the thugs get punched in the face, and G gets pushed off the edge of the roof altogether. Only Kung Wei's lightning-fast reaction saved the guy from death, but Kwong prevents the man from pulling his companion up by stepping on his shoulder. The newcomer says he has a plan, and the boss lets him climb back onto the roof. He proceeds to shower Kung Wei with punches as the guy lays out his idea. After receiving the goods, they can take the money back from the vendors by putting explosives on one of their allies and threatening to blow up the place. Satisfied with the man's skills, Kwong accepts his idea and chooses him to be the suicide bomber. The meeting will take place at an expensive restaurant with an artificial waterfall. That's where two local detectives happen to be the next day. They are having an affair, and Fong is not satisfied with being just a mistress for so long.
5 years. That's how long I've been waiting for you to leave your wife.
It's not that easy.
But Ching still offers her nothing but empty promises and evades direct answers. Lucky for him, Kwong enters the restaurant with a suitcase full of money. The vendors greet him with open arms, thereby checking the guy for weapons. The gangster is notorious for his dirty tricks, so they are ready to shoot him if he makes one wrong move. Assuring them that he came alone, Kwong hands over the money, and G-Dog takes the explosives for inspection. As the men are about to leave with the money, the boss gives the signal and a car with Kung Wei rushes forward. Before the men can put on their masks, a passing photographer takes a picture of them. The driver accelerates too quickly and almost runs over a woman and her child. To save them, Kung Wei jerks the steering wheel and the car crashes right into the restaurant. It flips in the air and shatters the glass walls. The customers barely make it out of the way, and the sellers scurry off. Kwong's gang opens fire, and the detectives become witnesses to the shootout. Fong leads the men outside, and Kung Wei seizes the suitcase. But the backup from the competitors prevents him from leaving. After revealing the explosives under his clothes, Kung Wei forces them to disarm, at which point a passing policeman sees the gangster showdown. Unaware of the explosive belt, he tries to shoot Kung Wei and is spotted by Fong. The girl yells for everyone to save themselves, and Kung Wei manages to rip off the bomb vest before he is hit by a bullet. He throws it on the chandelier, and the criminals rush to pick up their weapons. The gunfight resumes, and the undercover cop begins to show off his equally advanced shooting skills. He successfully dodges bullets and sends more and more attackers to the afterlife. Kwong finally gets a hold of the suitcase and makes his way out onto the street with it, hiding amongst civilians. The police arrive on the scene and are told by Chang not to open fire, while he himself nearly gets shot by one of Kwong's henchmen. Fong engages in a battle with the bandits, saving her colleague. She disarms the criminals and holds one of them at gunpoint. In response, Kung Wei takes Chang hostage. This way, he forces the police to release his associates with the money, while he stays behind. He doesn't have a plan for how to get out of the encirclement, but Fong gets behind the wheel of the police car and offers the criminal a ride and herself as a hostage instead of Chang. When they leave, the detonator on the chandelier goes off, destroying the last untouched corners of the restaurant. Fong distracts the criminal with chatter and takes him to an unfinished bridge which ends in a cliff. Kung Wei notices the trap just in time and jumps out of the car with the driver. Fleeing the chase, he blows up the fuel tank with a well-aimed shot and then jumps down using the cradle of a construction crane. Fong rushes after him, but doesn't make the jump and flies down. Kung Wei catches the girl and ties her to the pole so she can't continue the chase. The man escapes, unaware that his face was caught in a photo. Later, his identity becomes known to the detectives. However, they are unaware of his undercover work and only identify Kung Wei as a small-time Beijing gangster. Fong travels from Hong Kong to Beijing to find out more about the man. She arrives at the police station, where she is met by Kung Wei's boss. He gives nothing away about his subordinate, only mentioning his escape with G-Dog. Fong also finds out about Kung Wei's family and wants to pay them a visit. Meanwhile, Johnny comes out of school at recess and goes to play with Freddy. They draw hieroglyphics on the ground with sugar water and attract ants, which form words with their bodies. The family seems to be running out of money because Johnny is about to sell his watch to his friend. This is when they are approached by a group of bullies who have learned that the boy's father is wanted by the police.
Hey, look! That boy's daddy's a criminal! He's wanted by the cops! Give that back!
They wave the wanted poster and mock the boy by calling him a criminal son. Freddy rushes into the crowd, snatching the paper, and then protects Johnny from a barrage of rocks with his body. The scene is interrupted by the principal, who calls the boy to the phone. Kung Wei is calling his son to inquire about his mother's health. The son answers that she's gotten worse and won't get out of bed, and that she's about to run out of money for medicine. Kung Wei reveals that he is in Hong Kong and promises to send money. His heart breaks when Johnny complains about being teased at school because of the latest news. The boy fears his mother won't get better, so the father gives the son his pager number as a last resort. He promises that in time, things will get back to normal. While they were talking, Freddy was still being humiliated by the other students. After learning that they were taunting his mother with insults made from ants, Johnny no longer intends to tolerate it. He gets into a fight and with just a towel, defeats several of the boys and pins their leader against the wall. The bell rings, stopping the fight, and Johnny helps his friend up. At the end of the school day, Fong stalks the boy, following him. The boy decides to save money for his mother and does not take the bus. It takes him several hours to get home, but Johnny doesn't look tired, unlike Fong, who is visibly exhausted from dragging her suitcase. Johnny approaches his mother, showing her the ants he has caught, and is interrupted by the detective. The woman introduces herself as Kung Wei's business partner and is very surprised that the man has never told them about her. She manages to gain their trust, but Fong cannot contain her disgust when Johnny brings his mother the ant soup. According to the woman, it eases her breathing. Then the son pulls out the latest letter from his father and begins to read it out loud. He has sent them money and informs them that he will be staying in Hong Kong for another week.
Meanwhile, keep on doing what you're doing and don't listen to what people might say about me.
Fong is surprised that the criminal has such a responsible son. She begins to suspect that there is more to the story and gives the family more money, saying that it was passed on by Kung Wei. At night, the detective secretly reads other letters and looks at family photos. Sally catches her in the act. She realizes that Fong has deceived her and is actually working for the police. The woman loves her husband very much and doesn't believe the gossip about his criminal dealings. The detective doesn't want to upset her and doesn't reveal the details of the shooting. Instead, she only has more doubts about Kung Wei being a cold-blooded thug. Sally asks Fong to keep the money and to take care of her son if anything happens. The next morning, Johnny helps his mother with the laundry and Fong joins him. The boy praises the woman's dress, which his mother lent her. The detective is again surprised by the boy's courtesy. Although he too doubts Fong's intentions, she manages to convince Johnny that she and Kung Wei are friends. Meanwhile, in Hong Kong, Kung Wei is having lunch with Ji. The next assignment will be to rob an antiques auction. For this, the boss is joining forces with another mobster, a woman named Lee. They have already found wealthy buyers for their goods, who will have to say goodbye to both their money and the items they plan to purchase. Lest the police interfere, the auction will take place on a ship out in the sea. Kung Wei is shown the ancient statues that Lee got her hands on. He makes a correct assessment of their value, earning even more respect from his boss. Later, he reports everything to his commander, who praises the agent, but again says nothing about the timeline for completing the mission. Meanwhile, Johnny continues to write letters to his father, leaning over the light of a dim lamp in the evening. He writes that his mother is not getting better, and then Sally starts coughing loudly and falls out of bed. Fong and the boy rush to her, helping to bring the woman to the hospital. Realizing she is dying, Sally gives the detective a letter for Kung Wei. In it, she asks her husband to trust Fong. After making the woman promise that she will take care of Johnny, the mother speaks her last words to her son. She asks him not to forget her love.
No matter how much time passes by, I won't forget you.
After thanking Fong, Sally leaves this world. With tears in his eyes, Johnny asks the detective to take him with her. He pages his father about his mother's death. Kung Wei learns the news while in a meeting with the boss and the rest of the gang. He is utterly shocked, and Kwong notices it, demanding a response. He starts pestering Kung Wei more and more, and the latter snaps, attacking the boss. For this, the henchmen take him into a hold, and Kwong delivers several solid blows to the man. Ji finds a way to step in, saving his friend from further beating, and then helps him recover and come to his senses. In Beijing, Fong and Johnny are packing up to depart for Hong Kong. The boy says goodbye to Freddy, who gives him his watch back. He cries, letting go of his best friend. In the meantime, the detective stumbles upon a picture of Kung Wei hugging the police chief and realizes she's been lied to. Fong and Johnny go to the pier, where the woman wants to hire a boat. The captain immediately recognizes her as a cop and assumes that Johnny is her son. As the boy refutes these guesses, he calls his father's name aloud, and one of the sailors hears it. He turns out to be an associate of Kwong and immediately calls the boss. He tells him that the son of a gang member is traveling with a detective. Without giving anything away to Kung Wei, the mobster orders to kill them both. The gangsters on the dock immediately attack, and Johnny shields the woman. Together, they make a great team, skillfully fending off all attacks. Soon, all the criminals flee, and the detective gets behind the wheel of the boat. Along the way, Johnny asks her to tell him the truth, and Fong confesses that she wanted to arrest his father. But now, she's changed her mind and asks the enthusiastic boy not to tell anyone that his dad is a secret agent. The next morning, reports of Johnny's disappearance appear in the newspaper. Fong is angry because the information was fed to the reporters by her colleague Chang. The man wanted to get on the gangster's trail this way, unaware that Kung Wei was working undercover. Meanwhile, Johnny manages to contact his father, and Kung Wei asks Ji for the keys to his car. He hastily runs off to meet his son. The friend also notices the face of the boy he gave the ring to in the papers and rushes after the man. At this time, Johnny is watching the news and sees a report about himself. He thinks this is Fong's doing, that she set him up and wants to arrest his dad after all. The boy escapes from the woman's apartment just as she is coming home. The detective checks the phone recordings and hears Kung Wei's voice.
She thinks you're a cop.
What?
Are you, Papa?
Did she tell anyone this?
Kung Wei turns off the electricity in Fong's apartment and sneaks in through the window. At this time, Johnny asks for a phone at a nearby convenience store and leaves a message for his father that it is too dangerous to go to Fong's apartment. The sound of the message arriving on his pager reveals his presence to Fong. She and Kung Wei have a scuffle, during which they clarify the situation. They are interrupted by police officers who have been on duty nearby at Chang's instructions. Kung Wei escapes through the window, taking his wife's last letter with him. She died without ever knowing the whole truth, but Sally's heart did not deceive her, and she never lost confidence in her husband. Of course, she asks the man to reunite with Johnny, but just then the boy gets caught on the street by Po Kwong. The gangster says that his father sent him after the boy, and the kid doesn't question it. The boy is brought to the gang's headquarters, where Ji hands out cooked lunches to everyone. On the lid of the lunch received by Johnny, there is a warning that the boss can't be trusted. Soon, the boy's father shows up on the premises, but the two pretend not to know each other. Kung Wei claims that the posters are just a trick by the police, and that the identical surnames are just a coincidence.
Hey kid, what does your dad do? Is he a policeman?
None of your business.
For such insolence, Kwong grabs the boy and smashes the glass table with his head. Ji jumps up to protect the child, but Kung Wei stops him, confident in his son. A bloody Johnny continues to answer Kwong's questions, claiming that his dad will soon deal with the crooks. For this, he gets punched in the face again, and Kung Wei can't stand it anymore and rushes forward. Now, however, he grabs the boy by the throat himself. The man whispers to Johnny to use the sea dragon technique and pretends to choke his son. The breathless boy falls to the floor. Kwong praises the henchman, and the boy's body is placed in a bag and dumped with the rest of the garbage outside. As if nothing happened, Kung Wei offers to go on a relaxing ride, while Ji shakes from witnessing the murder. When they arrive at the restaurant, Kung Wei secretly calls Fong and leaves a message asking her to get Johnny out of the bag. In order not to arouse suspicion, the man spends time with the gang, but then pretends to be sick and does not get into the car. He runs after his son, but Kwong is already there waiting for him. He has ambushed him after all and exposes the undercover agent. The gangsters pounce on Kung Wei with knives, and the man fights back. But the boss wants to get even with the traitor personally and orders the henchmen to let him go. He even shoots one of them to get them to comply. Kwong tries to shoot the cop, but Kung Wei knocks the gun out of his hands. They find themselves facing each other, and when the boss starts to lose in the hand-to-hand combat, he orders his men to hit his opponent with the truck. They both end up grabbing the cab, but the driver puts a noose around Kung Wei's neck, threatening to throw him under the wheels. He is saved by Fong, who shoots the gangsters and drives away with her companion. All this time, Johnny was safe and sound, rescued by Ji, who got him out of the bag and hid him on a boat.
You seem to be as strong as your pop is. How about showing me?
All right.
Fong brings Kung Wei to her house, where she helps him recover from his wounds. She orders the police to comb the whole city in search of the boy, and in order to at least calm the father down for a while, she lies that Johnny has already been found and taken to the police station. Suddenly, Chang appears on the doorstep with flowers. The girl doesn't let him inside, giving Kung Wei time to hide. Meanwhile, Kwong orders to plant explosives on the ship where the auction will take place. He will take the money and then blow up the event to cover his tracks. When Ji comes to visit the boy on the boat once again, he is spotted by Kwong's men, who report it to their boss. Ji notices just in time that gangsters are approaching the boat and commands Johnny to dive under the water. But the boss finds the boy's shoe on the boat, and the man confesses to what he has done. He refuses to remain the gangster's loyal dog and wants to die like a man. Kwong pulls out his gun and shoots G several times. Johnny manages to stay underwater until the criminals leave. The wounded G dives for the boy, and they climb back onto the boat.
Don't die, G! G, let me show you some of my tricks!
Before his death, the man gives the boy a card with which Kung Wei can go to the auction and a phone to reach his pager. Johnny returns the lucky ring, but it doesn't help, and a second adult who cared for him dies in the boy's arms. The pager alert almost gives away Kung Wei again, who is hiding from Chang. Johnny asks to call him back and gives his location. In the meantime, the man proposes to Fong, 5 years later than he should have, but the girl turns him down and shoves him out the door. Kung Wei has already escaped through the window, and Fong learns of his plans through the call recording again. Meanwhile, Kwong is installing video surveillance on the ship. 6 cameras are aimed at the places where the bombs are planted, so that no one can try to disarm them. The boss leaves a henchman to monitor the cameras and walks away, but their dialogue is overheard by the nimble Johnny, who has been following the mobster. He sneaks onto the boat and knocks out the camera watchdog. He uses his phone to send messages to his father, revealing where the bombs are hidden. Kung Wei arrives at the auction and proceeds to defuse them one by one. With 1 minute to go before the auction begins, 5 bombs no longer pose threat. But then, Johnny's phone battery dies and he doesn't have time to report the location of the last one. It turns out to be planted right under the podium that Lee announces the first lot from. The bidding is interrupted by an impatient Kwong.
Put all your cash on the podium. Your money is mine.
What do you mean?
When Lee tries to protest, the boss blows up the woman with a charge planted in her jacket. The guests start to panic, and the gangsters hit them with batons to make them part with their money. Kung Wei resists and disarms 2 of them, which is when Kwong spots him. The policeman claims that he has already won, since he disarmed all the bombs, and will now take down the criminals in hand-to-hand combat, since no one on board has a weapon. Kwong tries to detonate the bombs, but they don't go off. He tosses the detonator aside and orders his men to attack the cop. Using 2 batons and deft leg kicks, the fighter easily tosses his opponents into the air and then takes on the boss. Kwong defends furiously and skillfully uses his long cape to stop his opponent's blows. Their strengths seem to be equal, but Kung Wei quickly turns the long sleeves against their owner. Kwong then pits 3 elite fighters against him. They knock Kung Wei to the ground and beat the wind out of him with powerful kicks. Afterwards, Kwong grabs an antique sword and tries to crush the traitor with exhibits falling from above. At this time, the father is joined by his son, who sprays the gangsters with a fire extinguisher.
Johnny, better go now.
But Papa, I want to stay here with you.
You sure about it?
You bet.
The 2 of them face 3 opponents and pick up thick ropes from the floor. They use them to immobilize the criminals and inflict painful blows on them. Kung Wei straps a rope around his son and launches him forward, with the boy pummeling his enemies with his legs as he flies. Kwong backs away and finds the detonator. He sets off a small bomb, which kills his henchman and concusses Johnny and his father. He prepares to finish them off, but then Fong, who has arrived in a helicopter, bursts into the hall. She wounds the mobster with a shot, but that doesn't stop Kwong from recovering and taking the boy hostage. He threatens to strangle Johnny, and Fong drops her gun. Kung Wei, in turn, immediately picks up the gun and points it at the enemy. Johnny manages without air for a while, but eventually falls, giving his father the opportunity to have a direct shot at Kwong. But this time, the boy actually needs help, and they try to send him to the hospital by helicopter. But the surviving Kwong pulls Kung Wei back with him and triggers the countdown for the last bomb. While Fong is flying his son away, the father manages to escape the gangster's grip and jumps off the ship seconds before the explosion. He swims to the tent on the shore, where Johnny is being unsuccessfully resuscitated by the doctors. Kung Wei panics and tries to do something to help him, but the boy is not breathing. Just as his father is losing hope, Johnny finally regains consciousness. Fong asks the doctors not to interfere with the reunion of the family that she has managed to become a part of in this short time. A small, curious cultural difference. The original Chinese title of the film translates to "My Father is a Hero," while in the US, it was released under the title The Enforcer. The main role was played by the legendary Hong Kong action movie star Jet Li. His own father died when the boy was only 2 years old, and his family was very poor. After he accidentally got into the wushu class, he made great progress, and at the age of 11 was given the opportunity to go to the United States. At the time, relations between the countries were strained, and this trip resembled a spy movie. Their group was constantly being watched, and their hotel room was full of bugs. According to the actor, He would take turns going to the vase, the mirror, the phone, and saying loudly that he wanted chocolate, ice cream, and fruit. After that, Jet would leave, and when he returned, he would see everything he had asked for on the table. At the age of 18, he was invited to act in movies, promising to make him the second Bruce Lee. And the directors were right. The films were a great success, and the guy was given the nickname Jet, which eventually became a stage name. As always, look for the name of the film in the description of the video. In the meantime, let us know in the comments. Did you continue your father's work, or did you choose your own path? And don't forget to subscribe to the channel and like the video so that more awesome plots come out as often as possible.